If I could have 1 minute, Andrew, for an anecdote, I just want to tell you a story of a friend of mine in terms of the military commissions. My friend Josh Draytell, who's a criminal defense attorney who was representing David Hicks in one of the first military commissions in Guantanamo, was sitting in court one day, and I have the greatest respect for JAG lawyers. I really think I've met the most remarkable people. So this is nothing to say against the individuals involved. This is about the system in which they find themselves operating. So somebody comes up to Josh and says, here's the paper that you have to sign to agree that you're going to follow the rules of the tribunal. And Josh said, well, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen the rules of the tribunal. And they said, oh, that's all right, we haven't written them yet. Sign here. Now, again, it's not the individuals in the system. The system, they're making it up as they go along. Are there some rights? Are there more than at other military commissions in history? Some. Are there as many as criminal court? There aren't. And how do you know that people are the worst of the worst if you don't have the evidence? So, sorry.
Thank you both very much. We have questions on Kieran, Kiemba, the drones, but I think at this point it'd be best to open the floor up to questions from the audience. If you've got a question, please raise your hand. Andrew Morgan, the business manager of the Juris Student Staff Association, will come around with the microphone. And I'd ask you to please keep your questions polite, civil, and to the point. Anybody have any questions?
If we accept the premise that we're at war, does the Geneva Convention still restrict our activity toward non-state actors, or is it quaint?
Yeah, again, if you look at the basic picture, the laws of war didn't imagine that you would go to war against a group. And before 9/11, we had radical Islamic extremists that were associated with Al-Qaeda that attacked us. How do we deal with them? Our domestic federal courts. I mean, that's what we did. 9/11 kind of changed everything. And again, two branches of our government, the executive and the Congress, launched out and they said, we're going to create some new law. We know it's not an exact fit. We've got the Al-Qaeda virtual state here, and there was about 60,000 people that went through those training camps in Afghanistan. And oh, by the way, they reconstituted their training camps in Western Pakistan. The organization is still vibrant. It's not going away. So we have the phenomenon here, and we got the law of war here. Wow, it doesn't fit. Well, we're going to do it anyway. But we're not the only ones that have done this. NATO, for example, after 9/11, NATO invoked Article 5, and they said that if one of our members is attacked in terms of war, then all the other nations will declare war. And they've never invoked their self-defense clause about Article 5. The UN Security Council also issued a resolution, and they said that they recognize our inherent right of self-defense under Article 51. What that means, Article 51 was written in the UN Charter. It says that if any nation is attacked by another nation, you have the right to defend yourself. Well, we weren't attacked by another nation, but they did it anyway. So it's not just the United States that is crafting this new customary law, if you will, because it's not in writing, but it's also the international community to a degree. So it is new territory, and it's not an exact science. We have the Congress weighing in, doing things. We have the Supreme Court weighing in. We have the executive, saying, well, I'm going to do military commissions under my authority because it's been done that way in the past. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do it. So then the Congress said, okay, we're going to create the 2006 Military Commission. You have President Obama, again, with a schizophrenic policy about how he's approaching this issue. And I don't blame, again, I'm not partisan either. I'm non-political, non-partisan, but I kind of call it like I see it. And I don't think he's doing a good job. As a war commander, you should be very concise, clear, because there is confusion. The fog of war applies to military commissions. It applies to everything. It's not a perfect system by any stretch of that. Is it illegal? No, it's not illegal. Are there some things that have gone bad here and there? Yeah, there's a lot of things I don't like about it. And you can get anecdotal evidence, here and there, but from our perspective as lawyers, is it illegal? The answer has to be no.
Well, there's a lot of space in that word illegal. In the all the habeas cases that are ending up in the District of Columbia Circuit, the D.C. Circuit recently came out with an opinion called Al-Bahani versus Obama, where they tried to figure out, well, what should the rules be for all these district judges who are figuring out who you can in fact detain, who's an enemy combatant, and how you prove that. And one of the first decisions that the court made was to totally disregard all international law of war. They said, well, that just doesn't apply. We should only care about what Congress says. Now, you were asking about the Geneva Conventions. To me, we are a member of an international community. And even if Congress says we can do this, and even if the Geneva Conventions are not self-executing and people can't claim rights, and those of you who study international law note that there are a lot of problems about the applicability of the Geneva Conventions because of the nature of what they are. In some ways, they're just sort of aspirational as opposed to really giving people rights. I think I want to go a different way with this question to tell you in terms of the international community about a very interesting recent report that I was reading by the Eminent Jurists panel of the International Commission of Jurists. And this is an association of jurists from all over the world that quite recently did a study. They spent 3 years, they had a panel going around from country to country, asking countries, what have you done in response to terrorism? How have you changed your laws, and how has that worked out for you? Now, this 8-person commission, which was chaired by Arthur Chaskalson, who was the former Chief Justice of the South African Constitutional Court, and included people from all over Uruguay and Mary Robinson from Ireland and different people. They went all around the world and interviewed people in a whole lot of different countries. They did Israel and Argentina and the United States and Ireland and all over the place. And what they concluded, and you look up their report on the website because it's very interesting, they said that they thought that the countries that changed their law in response to terrorism really were wrong. They said that the best thing to do if you're having a problem with terrorism is you shore up your criminal justice system. You make sure that you have a really strong rule of law to contend with people who are doing antisocial and criminal things. They said, first of all, terrorism, when you look around the globe, depending again, of course, on how you define it, but it's just not that exceptional. We've had great big oceans protecting us for a long time, but there are a lot of terrorist incidents throughout time that different countries have dealt with. What they said is if you start dropping your principles, you say, well, 9/11 changed everything. We don't have to follow the rules anymore. We don't have to follow the Geneva Conventions. We can change what we're doing. We can start making up military commissions because this is a war. They said that's the best way to get people recruited for the other side. You really, at that point, you're showing people that you don't respect the rule of law. So let me give you one example of something that the Obama administration did that I thought was very good. When Mr. Abdul Muttalib was arrested in the Detroit airport, he was the one on Christmas Day who they thought was trying to explode the airplane. He's now been charged in a criminal case. Now, what happened when he landed was that he was arrested. He was given his Miranda warnings, but not until after he had been interrogated for about 50 minutes, at which time he had already given a lot of very useful information, according to FBI Director Mueller. At that point, he stopped talking. They gave him some medical treatment. They fixed him up. And at that point, his parents were invited to come over from Africa to come be with him. And you may recall the story, his father had actually tried to tell everyone that he was concerned that his son was possibly going to be dangerous. So the parents came over and talked to Mr. Abdul Muttalib and convinced him to continue to cooperate with the prosecutors, and he's been providing additional information. Now, could that have happened if his parents weren't convinced that we had a rule of law and that we were going to treat their son fairly? It seems to me what we did with Mohammed Jawad, take him from his family to Afghanistan, treat him like the worst of the worst when we really had no reason to be sure that he was. That's not a good way to make friends around the world and have people admire us.